Hey everyone, welcome to the 2x2. Today I'm joined here with Johan Sauer, who is a longtime independent consultant and a really valued and respected member of our consulting team at Keenan Reed Strategies. I have a really interesting conversation with Johan up ahead. You'll hear it. We've already recorded it. This is one that has tidbits throughout that are useful for consultants at any stage of their career path. So there is useful information for those of you who are just starting out and in that first phase of learning. There is also great information for those of you who are mid-career, particularly in this economy and in this market. And a lot of you are struggling right now and thinking about what's ahead. Johan has been there and solved through that. And then there's, I think, some really inspiring stories around what it's like to achieve true mastery and take the risk to go out on your own and what that can really do for you and your own career fulfillment, and then what impact it can have on clients of all sizes. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and now we'll get started. Okay, so here's where I was thinking about this. I don't want to do a career arc, but maybe let's start with current state. Tell me about where you are in your career. Let's start there.
Well, I'm in chapter 4 of 5. How's that?
Now you're going to
There's a hopefully there's a chapter after working in my life, but I've been an independent consultant now since 2017. I kind of reached a point in my career where I love the work, and the more senior I got, the further I got from really doing the work, structuring the problem, solving the problem. The independent role was great because I'm dealing with the top of the house, sometimes a little bit smaller companies, not Fortune 50, but smaller companies have active leadership, have a bias to act, and the same problems we were solving for Big Co exist in every Co. And so it provides me the ability to do the work, to get the fulfillment that comes from solving big problems and creating value and saving jobs. And it also gives me a little bit of flexibility. So from time to time, I can take off for a while.
You said you're chapter 4. What were chapters 1, 2, and 3?
Chapter 1 was brand management. So I was at Procter & Gamble and Sara Lee, and I put the logo on the front of Diet Pepsi's can at NutraSweet. Chapter 2 was strategy consulting. So that was the big, the letter firms, a couple of them. And that was really top of the house, changed the direction of usually a function or a division. It wasn't the C-suite necessarily, but often a functional leader or a division team, leadership team. Chapter 3 was... this is chapter 4 already. Chapter 3 was more technology-centric transformation. So we did a lot of work around process reengineering coupled with technology implementations to kind of to cement in the new way of working. So it was a lot of fun because a lot of creative thinking. You're getting people to do things that they don't want to do, getting salespeople to embrace software, things like that. And then I guess chapter 4 is independent consulting, which has been a lot of fun. I've been doing this longer than any other phase of my career. And hopefully there's a chapter 5 at some point. I'm not anxious to get there, but that chapter 5 is retirement someday.
Okay, but chapter 5 is retirement.
I may never.
Would you have a retirement job?
Yeah, I'm never going to retire from something. I'm going to retire to something, perhaps.
To something, yeah. I like
do this work for pro bono for the good of the world, but I got to stay active.
Yeah, no.
My wife keeps telling me, "What would you do if you were retired?" And all I can think of are bad things.
That's what my husband says. He says you'll find problems. I'm not wealthy enough or old enough to retire quite yet. Is she coming? Maybe. All right. I want to go back to the brand management. When you were getting started in your career, what led you on that path? Was there something from your upbringing or from your youth or something you were interested in that inspired you to take the step in that direction?
Well, my aspiration was to go into fine arts management. And so I did. And I worked for the League of Chicago Theaters, the League of legitimate theaters. The big houses and the off-loop houses were part of it. And they wanted to create a day of performance half-price ticket outlet similar to TKTS in New York. So I was given the task of structuring it. So I set up a way to get the tickets before internet. So a way to get the tickets physically to and from the different theaters, designed signage for the front of the booth, found basically an office trailer, bulletproof windows in it. You could have kicked through the side of it, but that was a nice effect. And used my radio, TV, film last requirement, radio production, where I was on the Wally Phillips show in Chicago, a mega station, WGN, doing public service announcements every morning about what's on the booth that day. Hey, Wally, we got some great shows on the booth today. 1, 2, 3. In and out, 30 seconds. But I was working with a lot of advertising agencies, or a couple of them, and I said, what's your real job? Because I love what you're doing for us, but you're not making any money from us. So what's your real job? They told me about it. And I said, isn't that kind of what I'm doing already? Managing a brand, creating a marketing campaign. I've done a lot of new things to they go, yeah. I said, who's really good at this? Procter and Gamble. Okay. So I went home and I got samples of the before and after for a lot of different programs I impacted, pieced together some clippings around the booth, put a cover letter on it, my resume, in a big fat envelope, and sent it to P.O. Box 599, Cincinnati, Ohio. One thing led to another, a little bit of sprinkle on some good luck, and I was offered a position there. Changed my life.
When you were a kid, go back to when you were like 5, 6, 7 years old. Was there something that you really loved to do?
I like to take things apart and put them together again.
Okay. Was there any aspect of that when you were like, was there a commonality in that pattern when you were thinking of making the first steps into that brand management job?
Well, to be candid, I didn't know exactly what I was getting into. I had there were really 3 levels on every brand: a brand assistant, associate brand manager, and a brand manager. And I had a wonderful associate brand manager. We're still friends today. I won't tell you how many decades it's been. And a couple of years ago, we actually did a project together, which was a lot of fun. We were still finishing each other's sentences, and it was a great thing. So he taught me an awful lot about what it was to be a brand management. And it's a lot of different things if you do it right.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
You're mentioning something here. So what I'm trying to get through here is, if we've got masters, how do the masters get there? And in Robert Greene's book around masters, the first 3 stages are around apprenticeship, go learn by doing. And in that, he says that the most important decision you make in your career is determining your life's task and finding your first steps and leading into that apprenticeship role in an area that is connected to the thing that you were good at as a child is one way you might identify it, but the thing that really makes you tick. And for you, it's tearing things apart, putting them back together, which I've done enough work adjacent to brand managers to know that to be successful in that job, you have to be good at that, because you're always looking at how to improve that brand and the performance of the business.
What can I break so my competitor doesn't?
Right. Or, how do I stack this in a different way so that it looks different and you can, make it work?
Well, how do you get I get a package that's, 6 by 8 or whatever, pretty small package for a toilet bowl cleaner. How do I get a billboard effect on a shelf?
Yeah.
I was thinking, and so the front of the boxes, you put 3 of them across, it looked like it was a big impact. So I read a book early on called by Hammer and Champy, called Reengineering the Corporation.
Okay.
And when I read that book, I said, that's what I'm going to do, because I've been unfortunate. My dad's an architect, so maybe I get this from him. But I think in systems and in networks and pictures, not systems like technology, but how do things interconnect with each other? And a lot of what I've been doing in the last many decades is just that. Is how do you think of the individual components of work? If you take them apart, too many people want to push everything together into a big, break it apart, break it into little component chunks, and many of those chunks can go away. Many of those chunks are being done by the wrong people. Many of those chunks are being done without full information. And so how do you put those chunks, get rid of the ones you don't need, get some new ones that you may need, because technology is always evolving, put those chunks back together into a new, and then find technology to kind of cement it into place. I think about it as rebuilding a brick walkway. Pick up all the bricks, you put them around, hopefully get rid of a few, put some fresh ones in, and then you put mortar in between the bricks so they don't move. And that's kind of how I think about reengineering processes.
Process creative for you?
Very. I sometimes see things that people don't see. I'm not talking about weird things, but patterns and relationships and dependencies. And hey, wait, we can parallel path this. One example: I was actually doing work for a mechanical contractor, a big one. They do schools and hospitals and things like that. And I forget what's going on. We took their estimating process apart, put it back together, created 2 different versions, and we could find that it used to take them forever. I remember the timeline, but a long time to do an estimate. And we said, okay, what are all the various chunks? Can't we do these 2 things together in parallel? Can't we do these 2 things in parallel? Can we do a validation point here, but go, no go? So we really re-architected how things worked. And we took about half the elapsed time out of the process.
Mm-hmm. Just by
figuring. Exactly. And you had to do the same work. You still had to write your specs, and you had to write your submittals, what products you're going to use and what toilets or whatever you're going to use in the job. But you could do a lot of the things in parallel, and they were all making them independent.
Was there a point at some point in that chapter 1 or chapter 2 of your career where you found that you were kind of feeling, I don't know, I felt this. I'm just curious if you did too. If you started feeling the boost from that creativity.
Oh yeah, it was actually page 1 of chapter 2. I'm talking to the managing director. It was a small practice in Cleveland, but we're out taking a walk on a beautiful day, and he goes, "Look, I'm going to share a couple of things I've learned along the way. One, always tell the truth. That way, you don't have to keep your story straight. Two, always have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you're doing, always have a mentor and have fun." But it was really to have a mentor because he said this is an apprentice business, quote unquote, and it's absolutely true. When the patent expired on NutraSweet, all my fun money went away, all of our extraordinary profits went away. So they gave me some counseling or some outplacement. Kind of rare these days, I guess, but I was fortunate. And they did some aptitude testing, and it was determined. They said I should either be a professor or a consultant.
Hmm.
Many decades later, it's the same darn thing. What you're trying to do is make the complex simple. You're trying to convince people that your thinking is correct, bring them along with your logic, getting them to change their view. The most satisfying thing in the world is when you're doing a transformation project. You're in a 2B design session. There's always the guy in the polyester shirt in the back with his arms folded.
Always that guy.
There's always that guy, or it can be a woman too. I'm not, but there's always somebody who's the curmudgeon. And when the curmudgeon flips, they start contributing. That is the moment.
That's the moment. Yes.
You live for that. And then after that, it's all drudgery. You got to go do it now. But
I always say this is so funny. Like, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I say the same thing. It's like there's always, let's say now I'm in the mentor seat. I'm talking to someone, 15 years in that first like real big management job. A lot of times now it's with a client. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, you're going to go in and the first thing you're going to do in this is you're going to find the naysayer, because your job is to, one, take the naysayer aside and neutralize them in the group. And then two, go on your campaign to flip the naysayer.
Right. And said, hey, I value your opinion. Just please make everything in the room constant. If you have an issue, call me. Talk to me.
Yeah.
I had a great example of this. We were one of the largest soft drink companies on the planet. You can guess which one. It's one of two. And we were working with the bottler group looking for supply chain optimization opportunities globally. And we had found 3 to 5 billion with a B potential value out there. And we're in doing the final report. We felt pretty good about it. Well, I had some folks on my team. Then my partner was in the room. We're in kind of the green room before. Then the managing partner for the practice, and then the global managing partner for the practice, all there. There was mentoring at each level that day. The global partner took the senior partner aside and said, "I want to talk to you about that meeting last week." It didn't stop. So when you see it, so part of it is, we can say this is an apprentice business. And you talked about being the mentor, but you've got to demonstrate it. I love the concept of after action reviews. It's, hey, okay, we got asked for the proposal. We won the proposal. What did we learn? What could we have done better, different, faster, more efficient? What should we not said in the room?
What do you get out of that?
Well, there's no filtering, there's no posturing, but you time box it, you make it really short, no more than 30 minutes. And just say, guys, this is not an accusation. This is not to be accusatory. This is to learn.
An acceleration of learning.
Yeah, while it's fresh. You can't do this the next week.
Yeah.
I know I shouldn't have jumped on you. One of the things I keep hearing is don't interrupt me.
I hear that too. I don't think it's just like you can't stop solving the problem. You're not going to be able to stop interrupting. Like I gave up.
The other thing that happens, it's like we have a way too expensive, way too fragile refrigerator. And there's a guy in town called the Appliance Marshal. It's his brand name. And he knows everything there is to know about higher end appliances. So when he has a case, he knows exactly what to go do. And his people call him saying, "Hey, I got this. I don't know what to do." This last time, he actually reprogrammed the computer in the refrigerator to get our ice maker to work. He knew who to call at the manufacturer to do that. So to me, that's mastery. Mm-hmm. So once you do this kind of work long enough, and it's true, I think, in most every profession, that's what we call them practices, because you never get it right. You get these more and more and more pages in your playbook. To do consultant speak, you see these fact patterns emerging. And it doesn't matter if it's a mechanical contractor, if it's a packaging film manufacturer, if it's a consumer packaged goods company, the fact patterns repeat. Mm-hmm. And they're never the same. They're never identical, but a framework is like a recipe. It's not like I love to cook. I hate to bake. Because with cooking, you have guidance. With baking, you've got a formula. Mm-hmm. And if you screw up the formula, your cake doesn't rise, or your bread's hard.
And with cooking, you can exercise that creativity, which can unlock like this
Exactly.
true greatness.
Yeah, and this client has an appetite for this, but not that, right? So we're effectively what we're doing at this client right now, that you mentioned, is what should have been done. Everything we acquired about 3 years ago, and there was very little post-merger integration. So the way that corporate works was never imposed on this organization, and now it is. And so we're getting a lot of, hey, that's not how we do it here, and but I've done post-merger integration work, and I know the way you've done it before doesn't matter.
Okay, is the hey, that's not how we're doing here. We talked about the guy in the back with his arms crossed.
Mhm.
Is there's another one, which is the hey, that's not how we do it here. How many
There's a
times
lot
have
of
you
that
heard
here,
that?
at least a couple times a week. Every time I come out, so a lot of what we've been doing is defining how processes should work to meet with corporate standards, then doing training, creating work instructions, and quick start guides, and getting a couple power users in the community. And every time you do one of those, you go, "That's not how we do it." Yeah, but you kept telling me kept getting errors. If you do it this way, you won't get those same errors. I won't go into the details, kind of minutia, but and they said, okay, I used an analogy. You got to put the shoes back on the shelf before you buy the shoes at the discounted price. You got to put the inventory back in the warehouse virtually before you can pull it out and sell it at the right price. Okay, I get it. So a lot of it is, how do you relate?
Yes. Okay,
You have to
this is
be a
another
female.
point.
I mean, I was being stereotypical. I was female, so I use shoes, but I guess it could have been a guy with whatever.
In the Patel house, I will just say it is not the lady that has all of the shoes.
Anyway, but points. A lot of this is not even. It's not that you're the smartest guy in the room. I'll never be the smartest guy in the room. But I've seen a lot of things that most people have not seen, and I've been in almost 200 companies in my career. Whether it's just kind of in my master data. There's a lot of files in there, and that could be just a proposal. It could have been a piece of work. It could have been a long-term relationship. Point is, you walk a lot of hallways, you meet a lot of people, you see a lot of things, and part of being a master is saying, "Oh, this looks like that," or
Yes.
this is like one. It's a blend of these two things.
It looks like
I'm not
that.
sure which one it is
Yeah.
yet, but it's not that, and it's not this.
This
So
is a this is a great place to pause because what you've already gone through is of the 6 steps to achieve Robert Greene's 6 steps to achieve mastery. You've gone through the first 5 or the first 4, and we're going to get to 5 in a second. For those following along, the first one was discover your life's task and then take your first steps in that direction. Step 1.
or in my case, get really lucky.
I think there's a huge element of luck in this step. I think it's a mix of luck and fit. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get lucky the first time. So my first job was as a pseudo legal assistant at Kirkland and Ellis, big corporate law firm,
I know them, yeah.
in the Aon Center.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's timely because today we're recording this on September 11th. My interview with them was September 11th, 2001. Going into town on the train. I was at
Yeah.
my parents' house babysitting my sister in Lake Forest on the train, and they stopped the trains and turned us around at Evanston and sent us back north. I eventually get the job, and it was absolutely not a fit and not connected to my life's work. And it took about 2 years from the time I graduated from college to find a job that really fit. And it was, by the time I got there, I'm like almost 3 years out of school, and it's an analyst role, using data to solve problems and then presenting those problems in really simple ways that people would understand. And all of a sudden, it felt like I was on the steep part of the curve. It felt like my job was fun again. I was working and loving it, but it took getting into that. So it's not to say that someone can't figure this out. There's no expectation that you figure it out your first time. I think maybe the lesson is you keep taking the steps until you figure it out, until you
Well,
find
you
yourself in
keep
that
reinventing.
situation.
You reach it. Part of my reason for independent is I hit a certain age, and it doesn't matter the size of the firm. They want 40 somethings to be partners, and they want 30 somethings to be directors, and late 20s to be managers, and because they got to clear out the top of the pyramid for people to get promoted. I understand the logic of that. So, but there's no home once you've reached a certain point. You're expensive for a small company. You're whatever, and so you reinvent.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Hold that thought. I want to get to the reinvention
Yes.
for those of us listening. So that's step 1. Step 2 is years of time spent in apprenticeship. He recommends 7 to 8 years. I thought about this as when I'm going to go back to graduate school, and when I come out of graduate school, whatever graduate school that might be, and this is me being, 21 thinking this. I'm going to approach it like I would if I was going to medical school. I'm going to have a residency. And those 4 years after graduate school are going to be the years where I am about doing the hardest thing I can do to learn the most I possibly can. Which is how I found my way into consulting, because after I went to business school, that's clearly the hardest job you could do. You could argue maybe investment banking is too. I'm not quantitative enough to do that. And at the time, not interested. Still really not interested in like the money and the modeling and all of that. More interested in the problems. But this apprenticeship phase, you had that in first page, chapter 1. And then he says, step 3, the shortcut to mastery is mentorship. Finding the unlocks that can accelerate your learning through humans who you click with both personally and professionally, and through, he doesn't say this, but I think it's a great addition, using these short frameworks of groups of people to accelerate your learning, right? I would call them a postmortem. You called them something else.
After action review. Yeah, same idea.
The 4th step, which I'll mention because you've already talked about it, is creating social intelligence. So after you've gone through this period of learning the skills and learning the capabilities, now you have to employ those within an organization and bring others with you and learn from them and take from them and have them enhance your mastery.
You said the people are something, paraphrase, people is important
work
as the
the
problem.
People harder than as hard as you work the problem. That was something I had to learn at that exact phase, by the way.
Right. And what's interesting, you've been working on your IQ, so you now know H lookups and V lookups and E dates to add dates on calendars and how to make a date into a text. And I've just been doing this all afternoon. You learn how to do all that stuff. But if you can't convince somebody to do something in a different way, it's for naught.
Right.
So it's you grow your IQ and then you grow your EQ.
Right.
It's not an either or, but it's like emphasis on the right different syllable.
Right.
Once you reach a certain basis of how to solve the technical problem, the next value add is to get the solve implemented.
Yeah.
And that's where the EQ starts to play.
It's the exponential growth lever. It's like solving a problem is great, but if it's sitting there on paper, it's like, who cares? The expanding it through hundreds of people is where this really happens. Okay, so that's step 4. Step 5, and we're going to come to the next step, which is what I want to ask you next. Step 5 is unlocking creativity. So this is when the phase where you're like, I found my jam. You can do it. You can now start to do it like with your eyes closed a bit. You've encountered so many of those patterns that you say, this is the pattern, and I go.
And my favorite piece on that one is, have you thought about this? Would perhaps this work? You physically go up. We were doing a value stream analysis on this estimating process. So we had a 30-foot whiteboard nearly full of paper, east to west. I have a before and after shot picture of this actually somewhere. And then I said, well, what if we took this chunk and put it up here, and put this chunk and put it here? And pretty soon, instead of 3, 12-foot, 10-foot panels, we're down to 1.5. And they start to see, well, you could also do this and you could do that, So it starts to build on themselves, but you almost give people permission to get out of their own way, out of their shell.
So then the question becomes, moving from there to true mastery, Robert Greene believes, there's the step that people can be most afraid to take, which is taking what you do and going on your own path, leaving the journey from the matrix in which you functioned to the greater impact and path you should have by going out on your own in whatever shape or form that should be. And that is where we find you today, my friend. So the question is...
I'm on an island all by myself.
No, I mean, we're an atoll. Okay, there's a group of islands here. We all see each other. We wave and like toss coconuts. But what... And like, this is such an interesting story. And actually, I had a call right before this, earlier this morning, with a woman who had a really similar background to me, about 15 years younger than I am now. And she was really thinking through this phase, right? Like, when do I go and like do the thing that, whatever that thing is, and not be beholden to this system? What was that like for, like, how did you get through that? I don't know this story about you.
Well, part of it is some aspire to greatness and others have greatness thrust upon them. So I had this a little bit thrust upon me, and I struggled probably for about 6 months to figure out what was next. So I've been interviewed with smaller firms, and I interviewed with a lot of different people, and I talked to private equity guys, and I talk to family office people, and I talk
Okay,
to a whole
you're
bunch of
going through
different
this
people.
really fast, Johan, but like this is something that hundreds of people are going through right now.
Yeah, so I talk to a lot of people because you never know you're always going to learn something in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It may be just that coffee shop has bad coffee, or that person is not very pleasant to be around. You may learn that, but that's something you learned. But you're always learning something. And I learned about a lot of what I shouldn't do. But if I listen real carefully, they gave me some very, very good wisdom, and it was very consistent. I get contacted by hundred guys like you every week. How do you stand out?
Mm-hmm.
And and I really took that to heart because I go back to my chapter one, day one at Procter and Gamble. I was very fortunate. They got a lot of really good foundational training there, copy college, and how to write a positioning statement. So I went back to first order stuff. So two, Johan is the what? What am I? Am I a management consultant? How do I describe what I do? What's the value I bring, and why is that true? What are my proof points? It's an easy thing to frame out, but Tide is the brand of laundry detergent that gets clothes cleaner. That's because it's got blue crystals and this and that. So when you look at a P&G commercial, and I'm a little bit biased, you see the brand in the first 5 seconds. You see the end benefit visualization. Remember the guy with a cocktail shaker and pours wine on a napkin, puts it in there with cold water and ice, shakes it, pulls it out clean. That's what it does. It gets clothes clean in cold water. How do I get Johan to be as clear as Cheer?
How long? Okay, this is a great conversation. How long? Okay, so let's go back to the first time you figure this out and you get asked. Were you blubbering? Like, did you have a clean? How long did?
I had written, actually, when I kind of got to that conclusion, I'd written a whole bunch of them. So I didn't have an answer,
Okay.
but I try to use it as, again, a learning moment. I said, well, on my tax return, I say I'm a management consultant, but what does that mean? So I'd ask somebody, what does that mean to you? Well, people charge a lot of money and create big books and don't do crap. It was one answer I
Well,
got.
that's what they've seen in many cases.
Well, and I said, well, that's not what I want to be known for. And so I said, well, what I really like to do is to help middle market businesses thrive. Middle markets, a billion or less, more than 100 million. You get over half a billion, three-quarters of a billion, and they've got a bunch of infrastructure and stuff. They're often $1 billion company. They're operating like a $50 million company. I just happen to be sitting in one right now. But it was try to get a solution to a problem that's a universal problem.
Great question for you. When you tell someone that, how often is the next question? How do you do that?
Always.
Always. And now what kind of a conversation are you having?
Well, I have a couple of core things that I start with. One, I have this methodology called 80-20.
Oh, the 80-20. Okay, yes.
And you've probably heard about it. We can talk a little bit about that. But I
think
also
we
do an
should
assessment.
a separate episode on it.
Okay. We'll do a teaser today.
Yeah.
But there are two ways so one is I want to get a qualitative sense of the organization. So I'll look at, usually there's a privately held or PE held. So I want to look at your board books for the last year. I want to look at your financials for the last year. But more importantly, I want to interview everybody on the leadership team and a couple of -1s on the leadership team, because that's where you start to get truth. And coming out of that, really understand what the problem statements look like. Try to focus on there's usually 10 to 20. You can't do 10 to 20 things well. Tom Lako, who was the vice chairman of Procter & Gamble my first few months there, he goes, more advice. There are a lot of reasons to do anything, but there are only 3 good reasons to do something. Only 3 really good reasons. And you can only do 3 things at a time well. The rule of threes. That was a long, long time ago, and still it's fresh as day. So you get down to what are the critical few, 3, maybe 4 things that company needs to do to get back on track. And sometimes they're pretty hard, but don't get distracted by shiny objects. Don't get distracted by all the things you could do. If it's not one of those 3 things, we're not going to do it right now. We'll get to it later, but we're not going to do it now. And that's what having the EQ is being able to talk like that to a client and not anger them, but they go, well, yeah, you're probably right.
And now let's go back to take us back. We're in the coffee shop. You're having that meeting. 100 other guys look just like you that are having that same conversation, except they're not having the same conversation anymore. Now the conversation is not about you and your background and your experience. The conversation is immediately been shifted to their problem and as a thought partner on how you can help them solve it.
Show me the money. I need you to help me help you.
Okay, so I had a master teach me a little trick that I think adds on to this. I think it's useful for people to hear this. And he's been on this podcast, and I should have him back on in this series too. But he said, oh yeah, I just back of the envelope he was describing this discovery conversation. They're
Hmm.
talking about the problem. And he said, yeah, back of the envelope, we just did the math. He got that
Hmm.
conversation to the point where he was proving ROI before he ever generated a proposal, because he looked
That's
at,
the
how much
absolute
is that going
best
to
way to
cost me?
sell.
Right. So he
That's
knew.
the best way in the world to sell what we do is to start with the value. Because then the price, if the price is 10% of the value, I'm happy to pay it.
Exactly. Johan, this was news to me. Like, I have never thought about doing. I felt like that's the magic of how
Yeah.
to make it work.
So I mean, in this situation, my first question would, so I really help small to medium businesses thrive. So in your portfolio, do you have do you have anybody, any of your assets that could use a hand? Let's talk about that. So what's going on? Well, sales were growing, now sales are flat. What do you think that is? Hypotheses? Well, I think that whatever it is, right? Well, if you could get that back on track, what's that worth? It's like kind of the same idea. Here's cases, 3 examples of how I've done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
The way he did
and
it,
so you're
his math.
solving for an outcome. You're talking about an outcome. You're not talking about generic services,
Yeah.
and it's their outcome that you're talking about.
Okay, so I'm going to spitball this a little bit. One way you can get to the number, this is really just helping my development so everyone can listen along to this lesson. How much is that costing you? How much do you think that
Yep.
costs? That's one path. He gave me a path this was really, I mean, I would have gotten there if I thought about it, but in the moment he said, I figured out how to quantify the revenue opportunity for him for 1 point of share. So he, like, if I'm going to sit down, I think about it, but my brain just wouldn't go there. So he figured out, okay, 1 point of share is over the lifetime of a customer or of all of his customers. It's a smaller company worth roughly $1 million. So then comes and says, I think we should put our budget at X, because that's very, really, like, no brainer ROI to
Hmm.
take the first steps on something, which is totally right. The other one, so if you have cost, you have a revenue opportunity, you have a point of share. What others could there's an efficiency headcount cost. We've used that on your project.
Yep. There's a cost avoidance. There's a risk avoidance play as well. So I've had experiences recently where product quality has been a major issue, and these are kind of mission critical components in a manufacturing process. If they break, you're basically done. Well, I learned at NutraSuite that having a very highly consistent product with really solid testing before it gets to the customer will get you another 30% a pound versus what you expected because they trust you.
Yeah.
And so there's an opportunity cost, or actually sometimes a quantifiable cost for low quality. And we did that. We calculated that value, and we got a whole another work stream spooled up around quality improvements, getting better at our quality issue resolution.
Yeah. And technology, it would be a downtime cost or an
Right.
uptime, like the uptime efficiency.
Correct. Yeah, because if you're a customer and you've got your factories down because you don't have packaging material, that's really expensive. If you're making concentrate for soft drinks and you don't have artificial sweetener to make your diet soft drinks, that's problematic.
Yeah. All right. So, as the master now who has achieved step 6 in their chapter 4, in today's world, you're talking to the 23-year-old version of yourself. What would you tell them to, or what would you advise?
God gave you 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. Use them proportionately. You're not going to be right. Your best bet is to absorb everything you possibly can and learn. And if you're really lucky, it'll stick. I mean, it's kind of maybe not a real pleasant way to talk about it, but it's what I believe.
You know what I love? You didn't say anything about AI. You didn't say anything, because none of that matters. None of it
No,
matters.
it can accelerate your ability to learn.
Your advice would help them do that.
Somebody can mention something that you don't know anything about. I relearned today that Vilfredo, I forget it. You keep learning. AI can accelerate it, but it's not. You got to learn it by seeing patterns in people and
Mm-hmm.
things.
It's the
It can help you
pattern.
solve. It's like a macro. It's equivalent in my day a macro in Excel. It's the new way to faster solve a problem faster, but you still have to know what problem to solve and what value it's going to create.
Yeah, my husband and I were talking about our kids, and the gist of it was our older kids, not our little one. And the gist of it was, who, by the way, listeners, they're both in this age group in their early 20s. When we graduate, I mean, in the arc of my career so far, my first real HTML email address was in my first job. Like, email did not exist And now I've spent years doing cloud technology strategy, right? Like I
Hmm.
didn't need to know anything. The cloud didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
I didn't know email. What I knew how to do was to take something apart and to listen and to think and put these things together and to go learn. And I think anyone in this environment, just this AI hype is for the kids. It's just
Well,
not right.
it's a how to it's a how to solve,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not. You've got to know what to solve and the value of solving the problem. You could solve the wrong problem, spend a lot of money doing it, and have a really whiz bang solution. So, a couple of anecdotes. So, one famous global CPG company, consumer products company, when they went to SAP ERP system, they said our goal here is to give visibility to our global spend and save $1 billion. Okay, so spending a couple of $1 million on SAP makes a lot of sense if I get $1 billion back.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them said, "Ooh, we have Y2K coming up. I'm scared. We've got no value." Most of those fell apart. So it's solving the problem with purpose, and how you solve it today is going to be S4 HANA and not R3 SAP. But it's still, you start with the goal, a value driven goal, you do a lot better. So, what's the problem? What's the value of solving the problem? What have you tried in the past to solve the problem? Why does the problem still exist? Those are my first questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if they don't have an answer to that, I say, well, I can't really help you. Or let's do a project to figure out the problem.
Yeah.
That's a possibility as well.
Well, Johan, this has been great despite some early technical challenges. Thanks for sharing your knowledge on this. And I hope that all consultants, no matter where they are in this path to mastery, can take something away from a master who has kind of done it all in his career and isn't done doing it. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's always fun to have a conversation.